So you can see the title is a bit spicy that FHE rollups are not possible on Bitcoin, but that's not the case we're gonna talk about. We're sort of like trying to figure out during the whole talk session that what are the ways which we could adopt to build rollups on top of Bitcoin, which are sort of like FHE focused. Yeah. A bit about the team, a bit about RizeLabs actually. So like we have extensively worked with lots of cryptographic primitives. We have previously worked with Polygon Maiden, a whale project. We had our own banana wallet, if you have heard of. So yeah, so we are extensively worked with CK and have been exploring FHE from like last year, I guess, like from the mid of the last year. And yeah, a bit about the team. So, like, what are we gonna talk about today? So, we'll be having a bit of an overview of like what actually the rollups are, what are the three main components of the rollup, and then we will sort of like have a discussion over like what are the current settlement possibilities with the existing rollup constructions, and which of those construction we can maybe like adopt or we can maybe try to modify to sort of like adopt and build rollups on top of Bitcoin. So a bit of a disclaimer. So what all exploration we are doing, sort of like it's still under a heavy R&D. So don't quote my words over here. Yeah. So let's just try to understand first, like what is a rollup and like how does it actually differ from a sidechain. So with rollup, we basically try to sort of like execute the session transaction off chain via a particular staked entity. And rollers actually inherits its security from the base layer itself. We inherit the rollers actually work in a way that it inherits the consensus as well as the ordering guarantees and all settlement guarantees from the base layer itself. And additionally, like for the data availabilities, we have like certain external DA providers, or maybe as a rollup, you can post your data on top of the base layer itself. And how does rollups are different from sidechains? Like rollups don't have their own infrastructure to sort of like inherit the security, but sidechains sort of like build their own infrastructure to inherit security. I'm focusing on the differentiation of between rollup and sidechain. It's because like there are lots of rollup on top of Bitcoin. They claim they are rollup, but when you go into the intricacies, into the details, then you will figure out that like most of them are not rollups. They're not rollup equivalent basically. They are sort of like a sidechain constructions. Yeah. So why do we need a rollup? I think like while discussing the differentiation between a rollup and a sidechain, we sort of like already discussed that what are the needs of a rollup. Rollup helps us inherit the security from the base layer itself. It scales the base layer by offloading the execution, and it has like reduced trust assumptions and sensitive resistance, since like there are certain mechanisms like force inclusion and whatnot which we inherit from the base layer itself. So this is a bit about rollups. Yeah. And there are like a total of three major components of a rollup, like as we have already talked about: execution, data availability, and settlement. In execution, what we are doing is we are just basically like sort of like offloading the execution. We have a certain validator client who is executing a set of transaction off chain. That particular client is sort of like a staked entity. Whenever it's producing a block, is producing that particular block against certain stake. And then we have like data availability. In regards to data availability, we can store the data of the rollup and make it available for everyone to sort of like verify the current state of rollup. And data availability could be like any external providers, or we can use EIP 4844, etc. But things get interesting when it comes to settlement, because we'll sort of like control like how things are getting interesting in terms of settlement. So this is sort of like the same text which I just like reiterated right now. We have off-chain execution. We have like a state transition function running off-chain by a certain validator who has taken on L1. We have data availability. We can post data directly on L1 itself, but it will incur a high cost. That's why we have 4844. Or we can send the data to an external DA provider. In that case, we'll be positioning ourselves as Validium, but it's fine. We're still sort of like inheriting the security guarantees from the L1 itself. And yeah, from like making the data available for everyone to sort of like check the state, and if they want, they can also reconstruct the state using the available data. And regarding the settlement, in case of L1, it's fine. Like we have like program in case of L1, if L1 is Ethereum, it's fine. We have like programmability on Ethereum, and we can basically sort of like inherit the security assumptions from validity proofs in case of ZK rollups, or like fraud proofs in case of optimistic rollups. So this is sort of like a boilerplate I just wanted to like cover in some few minutes. Yeah. So execution. So what about execution? Like if we are building an FHE rollup, so how will it ensure the execution? What you will be doing? So if you ask this question to yourself, so just go fork it and integrate the FHE focus precompiles. We already have a very good library by Sama FHE VMco, which enables you to like integrate FHE focus precompiles in your Get itself. So execution is sorted, right? And similarly for DA, we can use external DA providers to get the guarantees over the ordering of the transaction. So execution and DA sorted. The main things the main issues comes at the point of settlement. Yeah. So in case of settlement, like the existing ways to settle for a particular rollup are validity proofs, and for ZK rollups, fraud proofs for optimistic rollup, and re-execute and verify the pessimistic rollup. So things will get a bit more interesting when we'll be talking about all this construction in context of Bitcoin. But just to state the fact, these are the three sort of like rollup construction we have currently. Yeah. So let's take an interesting turn. Okay, so what we have started with, what we wanted to build an FHE rollup on top of Bitcoin, right? So why don't you sort of like verify the proof directly on Bitcoin? Let's say you want to build a FHA rollup, right? So just do the execution off chain, generate proof, and verify that particular proof on Bitcoin itself. Easy, right? So what you need to do to achieve that? You have to do, you have to just write certain Bitcoin script. Bitcoin has its own scripting language. Write a verification script and verify that particular proof, whether it's FF long, modified long, gross 16 on Bitcoin itself, right? But unfortunately, it's not that easy because in Bitcoin we have lots of limitation. We don't have the state model the way we have in existing in Ethereum. The stack input size is limited to 1,000 inputs, but in the verification process we might need certain like millions of sort of like constraints. And then another thing like there's no integer multiplication possible yet on Bitcoin, and yeah, there's no OP-cat yet. Previously, there was OP-cat, but Satoshi disabled it because he thought like there might be certain attack vectors which we aren't able to comprehend, but that might break the Bitcoin chain itself. And also, like we can't have more than 4 MB script in a particular Bitcoin block. So these are certain limitations which basically sort of like do not enable us to build a verifier to write a verifier on top of Bitcoin itself. So unfortunately, proof verification natively, it's not possible. But when we started like our conversation, like, how can we verify the proofs on Bitcoin? We haven't considered BitVM. Like recently, there have been like certain advancement in BTC itself, BTC ecosystem itself. BitVM is not a new infrastructure. It's just a way of doing things differently. It basically sort of like enables you to transfer certain data, not exactly data, transfer certain commitment from one state to another, which led to another optimizations on top of BitVM. Now we have like BitVM 2, we have Snarknado. BitVM 2 is an optimization over BitVM, which basically sort of like enables us to verify a sort of like a FF long proof or maybe cross-section or long proof on top of Bitcoin itself. And in the permissionless way, it's still like we are not in BitVM2 and Snarknado construction, in both of the construction, we are not actually verifying the proof on Bitcoin itself. It's just that a particular, there's an entity called operator, which basically sort of like verifies the proof of chain, gets certain commitments for the intermediate steps while the verification. And then that particular entity sort of like posts intermediate on Bitcoin itself. And there could be like permissionless challenges who could challenge a particular step. And if the challenger wins, for that particular operator will get slashed. So under those construction, like we have like certain optimization with BitVM2 and SnarkNado. SnarkNado is sort of like a bit more inclined towards Snark verification, and BitVM2 is more inclined towards like Snark verification as well, but it enables general compute too. We'll share a bit more resources on this, like so that you guys could get over with. Yeah. So okay, with BitVM and the further optimization with BitVM2 and SnarkNado, we had achieved proof verification, right? Although it's a bit optimistic, but yeah, we have the proof. But can we generate proof of state transition when there are FHE operation involved? Or can we even generate the proof for FHE operation if we are going through the validity proof route? So unfortunately, like for now, it's not possible because like there are like certain common limitation which we're gonna talk about, like which will be facing sort of like while if we want to create proof for valid FHE operation, because like FHE relies on lattice period cryptography, where most CKB doesn't. These are sort of like very common limitation. In FTFHE, we have like modulo 264 to the power 64, which basically sort of like just forms a ring, not even a field. And FTE operation in general are quite expensive, and doing it in a constrained environment would blow up things. So for now, it's not possible to have like a proper ZK proofs for like arbitrary FHE computation, but there are like lots of advancement going in this space. We have like Greco, which basically enables us to get the proof for a valid BFE ciphertext or any RLW ciphertext. We have VFHE. It is done by the Zama team itself, where they are sort of like proving the bootstrapping operation in Plonket itself using IVC. And there are like certain developments going around in CKVMs. Like you might be seeing there's a whole lot of war in CKVMs. Like they're trying to highly optimize each other's infrastructure, and probably would be able to sort of like verify those arbitrary FHE operation in future in CKVMs itself. Yeah. So for now, it's not possible to create proof for arbitrary FHE operation, but like seeing advancements, and I think like Site.ai has a talk after that itself, and they have sort of worked on a scheme where they are sort of like creating the proof for CKKS scheme. Probably they will be able to like talk more on that. Yeah. So again, so there are so we are done with the validity proof construction, verifying the ZK proofs on BTC. And another sort of like verification which we have is like pessimistic verification. In pessimistic verification, what you need to do is you get the block, you just need to re-execute it and sort of like finalize it. Now, like what are the constraints in such sort of verification? Firstly, you need to like re-execute the block, which is sort of like defying the whole idea of making the execution off chain done by a single party. Second, you have to sort of like bootstrap this verification network itself, which when utilized in a rollup context, now rollup would be inheriting the security obtained from this particular bootstrap network. And if you sort of like try to think a bit more in that context, that now the rollup is verifying the security of that particular verification network, it's something similar to sidechain, because like sidechain also relies on their own infrastructure to provide security guarantees over the transactions. So it's a bit similar to sidechain over here. So we won't delve into this construction. Yeah. So the last construction which we are left with is like optimistic verification. Definitely in optimistic verification, like there are certain forward proof construction which are like highly adopted and sort of like most mature are optimism scannon and like arbitrum bolt, which basically in this construction what we basically do is like whenever a honest validator sort of like figures out that malicious validator sort of like proposing a block which contains some state which it should not contain, it's basically sort of like try to challenge that particular block, and there's a process goes on, the dissection process. And once we reach at a particular step where the honest validator and malicious validator are not agreeing to, we sort of like try to execute that particular step on top of L1 itself, because in L1 we can program things and L1 sort of like acts as a referee that who is saying correct and who is saying wrong. So we are still exploring over the optimistic verification, like is there any way we could enable building optimistic FHE rollups on top of Bitcoin. there are certain ways which we sort of like explore. Maybe we could use Babylon chain over here, like because Babylon chain is sort of like a chain built on top of Babylon node, which basically enables you to sort of like deploy a Turing complete smart contract, and you can maybe enable this sorts of dissection protocol or executing the last sets of instruction where the both honest and the malicious validator are not agreeing to in the Babylon chain itself. But again, like that also poses certain security assumption, because now we are sort of like relying on the security of Babylon chain itself. So this is sort of like for now as an open question for us. We are still exploring. Would love to get your reviews. Like if you have like certain reviews in this context, like how we can enable building like optimistic FHE rollups on top of Bitcoin. So yeah, that's sort of like an exploratory sort of presentation I had today to deliver to you guys. Would love to discuss any ideas, like if you guys have in context of building FHE rollups on top of Bitcoin, and we'll share the PPT. It contains all the resources which I use during the presentation. By the way, thanks guys. So yeah, that's it. That's all I had.
Now, if we have any questions, I'll pass around the mic so that we can get the question recorded as well as the answer. Any questions for our speaker?
Yeah, definitely will. Could you talk? I do have two questions. Could you talk a little bit more about what Snarknado is? Something I'm not too familiar with. And
What's
Snarknado.
Snarknado? Okay.
And the second question is like, could you elaborate a little bit more? What are the challenges on the FHE side to
Okay.
for proofing system on layer 2?
Sure. So Snarknado is basically an have you explored BitVM by the way? Oh, interesting. So Snarknado is an like optimization over BitVM itself, and BitVM is sort of like have the number of challenge response. BitVM basically like enables the dissection protocol, like in case certain verifiers wants to challenge the operator who has sort of like posted some commitment. But in Snarknado, we are sort of like relying more on the polynomial interactive oracle proofs, which is sort of like snark aligned. And with Snarknado, we have like we have reduced, no, not we have reduced, like the team have reduced the number of challenge response period to 4 in the bisection itself, whereas in BitVM, like I guess I'm not sure like how much challenge response we have in BitVM, but yeah, but this team has reduced it to 4. But for now, like these are sort of like the points which I just mentioned. To go a bit more deeper into it, probably I will share some resources for you, and maybe we can discuss it offline. And what was the other question? Okay, the limitation for generating the proofs for FHE operation is that.
Yeah, what seems to be the what are the research questions that's like right now making it infeasible?
Okay, probably I think like site.ai guys would be able to answer it a bit more in the deeper context, because like these are like really high level points which I just mentioned in the PPT. I don't wanted to like get a bit more deeper into that. So probably we'll share some resources around it, and to get a deeper context on like what are the issues for generating the proofs for FHE operation probably. Yeah.
All right, let's thank our speaker again.
Thanks for listening, guys.